what Cuba has a tendency to do is arresting some people, and then when a large government power or an NGO asks them to release them, they kind of just do and act like it didn't happen, but then go and do it again. So some of these people were let go. In 2008, Cuba signed 2 UN agreements, one of civil and political rights and one of economic, social, and cultural rights, which would both have to do with media and the free access of information to the public. They were signed, but the Cuban parliament never ratified it. However, Cubans were allowed at that time to get their own computers for their houses, and up until then, mobile phones had been illegal. So when Cuba signed that in 2008, mobile phones became legal. And also a lot of journalists who had been imprisoned were released. They had been imprisoned from something called the Black Spring, which was when a lot of journalists Castro uses the TV a lot to talk to his people. He kind of does like a fireside chat thing. There's only a couple TV stations, and they only broadcast about 2 hours a day. And there's no cable or satellite, so a lot of variety there. Because the revolution includes the interests of the people. Radio stations were set up for culture and educational programs. They're meant to foster the goals of the revolution. For example, Radio Rebelde offers Russian language instruction, as well as literacy and political commentary. Like I said, Cuba is very big into the arts, like actual art as in painting, and also ballet, other things like that, and literacy and education. Cuban radio stations had to compete with broadcasts from radio stations in Miami, so they also began to offer U.S. and British musical programs. Now there's 3 TV stations in Cuba. They offer programs on education of science, language, maths, and other subjects. They also, I'm not sure what that is. They also offer programs on culture and education. Most of the movies they show are old, culturally sound Cuban movies. But recently, the Cuban government started confiscating TV antennas that receive U.S. programs because they don't want their culture infiltrated that much. The revolution means the interest of the whole nation. Freedom of information is still drastically curtailed in Cuba. Only state-owned media can operate. You can't like start your own media production thing over there. Anyone trying to spread ideas that go against the communist regime is subject to harassment, threats, and arbitrary arrests. And the internet is incredibly controlled. Nobody can have rights against it. Castro wanted to publicize to the world that Cuba is strong, so he put most of their TV, radio, and news broadcasts on the internet. However, internet access isn't widely available to at least one people. There are info gaps and information isn't freely available to the Cuban people, so it's limited to the rich, which is indirectly subsidized by the government and exploited by corporations as a pure entertainment commodity. However, a few internet cafes are popping up, mostly in Havana, but there's a high cost and low speed of connection for those who do use internet in Cuba. They used to blame this on the embargo set up by the U.S., but recently, well not so recently, there was some sort of cable built between Venezuela and Cuba, which improved the accessibility of the internet. However, their government is still restricting the access to it. So Cuba continues to be the only Latin American country tolerating no independent media and relaying in a media that relays only the regime's propaganda of the revolution.
Okay, thank you very much.